today we just want to present the kind of like recommendations on low carbon concrete requirements, and we have put forward to the New South Wales government agencies. So we kind of adopted a kind of like hybrid approach, and then depends on the supply chain capability in the area. So the first recommendation that we put forward, I think that's widely used by a lot of like asset owners and city metros. They nominated the replacement levels of SCMs. So we adopt this approach as well for this project, and then we nominate 50% of SCMs, and we also encourage the use of tertiary blends, and which is helpful for the concrete durability performance and the workability as well. And then we nominate 50%, I think, and we had consultations with Wholesome, Bora, and Hanson, and I think 50% is doable. I think is the BAU in the current market, and then it's a target that we should aim at. And then also we nominate 60% for binary blends, and we nominate 60% for slag and 35% for fly ash. I think that's also kind of business as usual replacement level, and on the market. And that's for precast. For precast, we're trying to push a little bit harder for precast elements, and then for slag mix, and we nominate 45%. And then for fly ash, I think most of the suppliers they can achieve 20% fly ash and 25% fly ash, and 30% fly ash is doable. Depends on the project schedule, and depends on the project budget as well. So so we think 45% and slag and 30% fly ash is also achievable for precast element, and that's for the SCM requirements. That's one of the options we put forward for the government agencies. I'm just wondering if anyone has any comments on this one.
Yeah, so this is all in relation to like embodied carbon drivers, is it? So I noticed for your second one, you've got in there like minimum SCM of 60% slag or 35% fly ash. Is that based on like a calculation of like they both equal the same embodied carbon?
Yeah, that's the option 2. Yeah, for option 1, I think it's very easy for a lot of projects just to adopt the replacement level, SCM replacement level. The option 2 is the next slide, and then probably we'll get into it soon, is the embodied carbon reduction target, and it's kind of equivalent to the replacement level we nominate on the slide 21. So I saw Sarah and Ali have some questions.
More of a comment with precast. What we've been finding on major projects when we nominate a high SCM level, they're just increasing the amount of cement that goes in as well. So your percentage is correct, but they're just adding cement, which is defeating the purpose. But they claim it's because they can't get early strength requirements. The impact of that, though, is we are seeing compressive strengths up to 90 MPa on the final structure, which is ludicrous.
Yeah.
So that's our biggest challenge as we see it.
Yeah, that's true. And I've seen many cases like that, and where we only need 50 MPa precast elements, and they have 600 kilograms of cementitious material, and where they have 500 kilograms of cement and 100 kilograms of fly ash, they achieve 20% reduction, but it's that amount of like cementitious material necessary, and we think it's not necessary. And then for these kind of requirements, we also nominate the maximum cementitious content to avoid that problem, to prevent that problem from happening. So I think later on in one of the slides, and we have like corresponding maximum cementitious content for each of the compressive strength grade, to prevent suppliers to use unnecessary or excessive amount of cementitious material. Yeah, and we also had a discussion with DTP in Victoria and about this issue. And then I think they updated their specification. They also they're trying to update their spec and to prevent this problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And then Navid, you have a question?
Yeah, mate. If I may, May I ask, are there any other rating systems commonly in use, say globally or in Australia, to replace the SCM content definition? So as you mentioned, that could be sort of kind of limiting, just trying to focus on what's the percentage of supplementary cementitious material as the only sort of way of rating concrete mixes and targets might be a bit sort of limiting again. So
I think this type of requirements is the most widely used kind of approach across major infrastructure projects. As far as I'm aware, some of the projects that adopted the embodied carbon reduction as the requirement, and then that's basically two options most of the projects adopt at this stage. Yeah. And
right.
yeah. John, I saw John and Robati put the hands up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused.
Mm,
It looks like your presentation or your objective is to continue to have supplementary cementitious materials. I
mm,
don't think there is any. I don't see any perspective of enhancing and minimizing cementitious materials. There seems to be momentum to continue to use cementitious materials at the highest possible quantity, rather than to minimize supplementary cement materials or cement itself, and optimizing the dispersion characteristics of the mixture to get what you want to get.
mm.
Is that something we can talk about?
Yes, I think we try to nominate the maximum amount of cementitious material that we're allowed to use in the mix. That kind of in a way to prevent people using too much cementitious material, unnecessary material. And then I think that's one of the approach that we adopt. And then is that kind of address your question?
No.
Yeah.
I'm just
Mm.
I'm getting the feedback that
Yep.
people who are encouraged to increase their supplementary cementitious materials are also increasing the cement amount, and it's got to be a lot to do with the rheology of the mixture and the ability to achieve certain operating strengths early in the stage during the manufacturing process. And we should be looking at not only reducing cement and increasing supplementary materials, but also changing the rheology of the mixtures to achieve these early strengths.
Mm.
And to do that, you have to look at different chemistries of hydraulic conductivity. You have to look at different ways of optimizing the water mobility in that structure, in that dispersion. And if you're going to leave it to the compounders to meet a top line directive of increasing supplementary materials, it doesn't help them in their ability to make a mixture that is suitable for their processes. And the work that we've done shows that you can actually change the rheology of the liquids, and you can reduce the cement content and substitute it with aggregate, not with cementitious replacement alternative materials, to achieve the same strength, because you are managing the water demand much more efficiently.
Yep. So you're talking about automation of the mix design. So in the specifications, it's hard for us to put a really explicit requirements to say you have to optimize your mix design to achieve a better outcome. So I don't find a way we can put the requirements there to mandate that kind of practice. But what you said is very important, and then we're just trying to find a better way and an easy way for project to reduce provide them the easy wins and the low hanging fruit for them to achieve better low carbon outcome. And then in terms of the optimization of the mix designs, I think we can leave it to concrete suppliers to provide a better solution for us.
But if you don't help them achieve their optimization, they're not going to do it. They're going to stay within their paradigm.
Yeah, I think that has something to do with procurement, and then we have different suppliers, and if one supplier and then the other supplier, one supplier can provide a better same performance but a lower total cementitious content by improving the rheology of the concrete mix design, and I think the project is definitely gonna go for the ones with lower embodied carbon with better performance.
My full opinion is that you can't change what you want to achieve without changing the rheology of the mixture. You can do whatever you like, but you have to look at the whole mixture as a totality in its wet phase before you can look at it at its dry phase. But thank you for the discussion. It's been great.
Yeah, I'm happy to have a further discussion to see how we can incorporate the workability requirements in the specification to further achieve better low carbon outcome. Yeah.
Thank you, John. That's quite interesting. And I may follow up with you, but Sam, I'm quite curious about RMS mixes like a B80, which we need the LES strength and which is very crucial for their program, and aiming for 60% for B80, which is quite challenging. How does it work? Because that's 60 across all mixes, all elements. I just want to make sure, is it any intention of break it down based on a specific component or a specific type of the mix or not?
No, we don't want to break it down, and because if you break it down, it will be too prescriptive for the projects. So we just provide high level kind of requirements, and in terms of which specific applications, if this application requires high early strength, if it's not, and I think it is kind of decision we have to leave to the designers to make. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because a lot of exercises we do on our projects, we list out all the elements we have and then identify which elements requires high early strength. And then within that high early strength requirement, and then we will go to the market to identify the mix with the highest SCMs.
So that's the suggestion, is not the compulsory to follow.
I think at this stage we just we hope to provide more flexibility. So yeah.
If I may just comment on what Sam is, we say overall is 50% replacement. So if there are risk applications that need to take a bit less, and then there are low risk applications that can take more replacement, it's overall for the project is what we are proposing, the targets that we're proposing.
Oh, okay. Not at the mix level, at the project level. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, many people have questions. Probably, Ali, you've been putting the hands up.
Yep. Thank you so much, Sam. I just want to confirm, like, when you say like replacement, so what is the reference point that you're comparing to? So, for example, like we're saying 50% SCM replacement. So if you can use a reference, if you use a reference point that is already have got a lot of cements in it, then perhaps those percentages is not, it's not too much. But if you use a reference case with less cement, then perhaps it would be like, harder to achieve. And also based on that, also the amount of the carbon reduction can be actual, or it can be like, kind of nominal based on what reference points are you going to use. And that's it. That is the first comment. That's probably you can elaborate more on that. And the second one is that I'm not sure, like, if putting emphasis on fly ash and slag is a good option, or if we just need to, as also John mentioned, the focus needs to be reduction of the cement content, or even if that's one level higher, the emphasis should be on the reduction of the carbon reduction of the embodied carbon of the material itself, or based on the project, etc., which is going to be another level. Because one of the things is that the source of the fly ash and the slag that has been used, it might be different. It has different, emission transport based on is it local or is it come from overseas? Are we getting fly ash from India, or is it just local fly ash, or is it slag? Most of it's come from Japan and things like that. So we cannot just assume that all the fly ash and the slags that been used are the same. And we cannot also assume that they have like almost zero embodied emission, because it's case by case, it would be very different.
Yeah, I think to answer in response to your first question about baseline, for this one, basically we assume the baseline is 100% OPC. So we didn't provide a different reference baseline. So because it's the baseline, because we're talking about government agencies where they have project in regional areas. So in regional areas is I think it's kind of not very practical if we say the baseline is 20 mixes with 20% SEMs. So just to able to accommodate like consider the projects in regional areas, we nominate the baseline as 0% SEM, and then based on that, and then if you can achieve 50% SEM levels, and then I think that will be a really good outcome.
I'm sorry, I mean, in terms of the percentage, so it should be like a number, like for example, what is the kilogram per meter cubic for 25, 20, 32 MPa concrete as a reference case? So based on that, the percentage needs to be verified. So for example, as a concrete supplier, I mean, the concrete suppliers in the group can probably comment more. I can have like a different mixes with different amount of cements in that for different grades and for different applications.
Yeah, so that's why we have a table where for different compressive strength grade, we have different cementitious content as the reference, and then based on that, and then you can achieve 50% or 60% as we nominated. So I think there's a table somewhere, not in the slides.
It's in slide 25, Sam.
25,
if you go to 25, the table is not there, but for example, for 32, maximum would be 360 kilos combined cement plus cementitious supplementary SEMs.
Yeah. So we have a table from 25 MPa up to 65 MPa, and then what's the reference cementitious content, and then we assume it's 100% OPC, and then that's your baseline. And then if you use that baseline, and then you need to achieve this target. Yeah. And then second question is the supply of fly ash and slag, and then we specifically say fly ash and slag in our requirements. And I think the comments is really fair. And then but at this stage I think it's easy for project just to like specific target like specific cementitious material, and then we also have some requirements later on, and then we encourage the projects to explore other cementitious material, supplementary cementitious material like limestone, like calcium clay, but the maturity of the market varies, so it's easy for project just to target at fly ash and slag at this stage, and as the concrete market supply chain evolves, and then there is the opportunity to include limestone and the calcium clay in the requirements. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mark, can I have a question? You've just answered it a little bit, but there are other forms of SCMs that are undergoing evaluation right now, including our amorphous silica at MCI. And there's various different kind of applications we're looking for which have these types of replacement factor. So I just want to keep you in mind that it's not just kaolin, and it's there are various forms of new SCMs, and particularly ours that is being evaluated at the moment with UTS and Smartcrete.
Yeah. I think for this one, this is one of the options, and we put forward. And then there's another option, and we look at embodied carbon reduction. So if the project adopt the requirements and the evaluation based on the embodied carbon reduction, so it gives more flexibility for the suppliers to provide the mixes with all different kind of cementitious materials, not just fly ash and slag. So there's an option too
because
there.
they are diminishing resources, as you'd understand, and particularly because we're looking into Japan as well, where they're moving more fastly towards other forms of SCMs, and also point you towards the pozzolanic, the new pozzolanic standard around morphosilica as well.
Yep. Yeah, we're quite aware of other like supplementary cementitious materials that is being developing, and so that's why the second option is the embodied carbon requirements, and then you can either choose SEM target for the project as the requirement, or you choose the embodied carbon as the requirement, for your project. So we provide flexibility for the project to respond to the like local supply. If there's a local supply of different cementitious material, they can choose the embodied carbon reduction as the requirement for the project. Yeah. And any further questions? Sarah or Christine?
Sorry, I think Evan got ahead of me there, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm kind of, I was going to ask Sam for a bit of like an overview kind of context of like this approach first. I guess you might have explained that there, just like to clarify, I guess that was option one, was it? Recommendation based on an SEM, but from what I hear, and then also that reduction in SEM from what I hear is from like a reference base case table.
Yep.
And then option two is like a carbon equivalent one. Probably just that context, I guess, for everyone, just for the slides, I guess there's a number of options, are there? Like,
yep.
And probably just the context of this is like the number of options and the recommendations, is it? And what's the aim, I guess, probably also of this outcome? Is it like, have all the recommendations been provided and they're looking at picking it, or is it going to be all these available on the table? Probably also that context for everyone as well, I think.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification, Evan. Yeah, that's what we are trying to do. So for project, we have option 1, 2, 3, and then depends on this local supply chain. You can either choose SAM target as your requirements or embodied carbon reduction target as your project requirements. Yep. Any further comments?
Yeah, look, I was just going to say that I did a presentation last month and we did look at various concrete mixes. I don't know whether you were there for that, for the Surface and Civil Alignment Works project. We spent 6 months trialling different mixes, and in the end, really, we ended up with a mix design which was fairly close to what we had offered at tender. So we went through all of the scenarios of different contract requirements, whether it was global warming potential, whether it was Portland cement reduction, whether it was looking at cementitious carbon emissions, whether it was SCM percentage. And in the end, each mix had its, nothing achieved all of the requirements, right? So you do have to choose some sort of order of priority. But you did sort of answer that question, is that the contractor could choose between the two. But it is good to know where the priority is, because as if it's going to be SCMs, you can just up the cement and you haven't really achieved the reduction. So I think the embodied carbon reduction should take priority in any case. And you do want to be supporting, material circularity as well in terms of having manufactured sand, and that should be part of the equation, even though it doesn't have a big impact on embodied carbon. The other thing I'd say is that the biggest thing that I sort of lesson learned for me on that project was that the greatest achievement was in design, and actually just designing out volumes altogether. That was more significant than playing around with the mixed design. And the workability issues were absolutely critical for the type of infrastructure we were putting in, which was a viaduct segment. So that's why we couldn't achieve the overall targets. And the max we've been able to achieve is about a 35% SCMs for the precast elements. So, and a lot of that is tied to program, so you can want these things, but if the program dictates otherwise, you've got your, MPA strengths that you need in 12 hours and 24, and that's so much dependent on precast production. So if you put in a 50% SCMs, it's very much dependent on what proportion is in situ and what proportion is precast.
Yep.
So let's say Parramatta Light Rail, we're able to achieve that sort of 50% SCMs, but there was a lot of in situ concretes. We're probably going to do the same on Moringa Freeway. We can't do it on school. So, and it's not that we haven't tried to optimise. We have tried to optimise, but it just doesn't quite work sometimes, these numbers. That's all I would say. So, look, program is critical. The other thing is, what I'd love to see more of in contracts is actually putting in trials. suggesting that trials be done as part of. So we did actually have that in our school project. We were to undertake trials of recycled materials, but we could look at that in terms of concrete mixes. So as people were suggesting, trialing different SCMs would be great if they built that into the contract to get some confidence around those materials.
Yeah, so I think yeah, it's really important. Like you mentioned the early strength and also the workability. I think that's the most important things and to contractors and to the program sometimes. And then in terms of the embodied carbon and all the SCM levels, and then we nominate the requirements for the whole project, not for a specific like casting situ specific casting situ application. So if the project overall you can achieve 50% replacement level, for piling sometimes we have now we have like 70% SM mixes available. So if you have a lot of piling and then you all use like 70% SCMs, and for some applications probably you need higher strength, you can only adopt the mixes with 30% SCMs. And then if you balance them out, overall, if you can achieve 50%, you still deemed as like compliant to the requirements. So it still will provide flexibility for the program, depends on which element you need like really quick turnaround and the construction program. Yeah. And the other point you also point out, and then the recycled materials, and then we also really want to provide some requirements to push the use of recycled materials. It has nothing to do with the embodied carbon reduction, but it's for the circularity. Yeah, and then we provide some recommended requirements and to push the use of recycled materials, and like the manufacture sand you mentioned, and we also have requirements for recycled concrete aggregates. We tried some mixes with 20% recycled concrete aggregates on infrastructure projects, and it worked really well. And so we nominate 20%, and based on our experience, project experience and field applications, and then we also nominate the requirements to encourage the use of recycled plastic aggregates, and which we also tried on our infrastructure projects. So we have all these requirements in place for recycled materials. And then
is that a KPI payment in terms of incentive, or what do you mean by incentive?
I think it's more like incentives. We need to consider the projects in regional areas where they don't have access to these recycled materials. So the project has to investigate the options for recycled materials. So that's why we put requirements here to mandate the project or the contractors to look into the possibility of using recycled materials in their mixes.
I think it's good to spell out we expect you to undertake X amount of trials, just because we won't do it otherwise.
Yeah. That performance is definitely very critical. Yeah, and then we try to put requirements there to encourage them to try, and then yeah. And Sarah, you have some comments?
Yeah, I've seen it on quite a few contracts where they have got an embodied carbon target, but nobody provides what the base case is. So at this stage, we believe that's fairly pointless unless a base case can be nominated. You've got no idea what you're trying to reduce otherwise. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So as I mentioned, we have a table where we have maximum cementitious content for each of the compressive strength grade, and we also have a second column, and this is the maximum embodied carbon, and then for each of the compressive stress grade. And so you have baseline to compare either the SEM reduction, or you have baseline for the embodied carbon to calculate the embodied carbon reduction. Yeah, it's not in the slides, but it's in the requirement that we put forward. Yeah.
You probably need to be very transparent on how you've calculated your embodied carbon levels, because it will be challenged.
Yeah,
unless
correct.
It's very transparent.
Yeah, so that's why we put a note in the requirements. So for specific SEMs, and then we nominate the embodied carbon value you should adopt. And these values are extracted from the LCA, the database. So for people to use these values to calculate the embodied carbon reduction.
Right. So can I just ask a question here?
Yep.
Like this is a great methodology, I think, in terms of moving something forward. Next month, I am seeing Jim Betts, the Secretary of the Department of Infrastructure. He's asked me to come in and basically give him a bit of an industry view on how he can encourage, how he can pull through low carbon embodied materials into infrastructure. So there's it's not just cement, concretes, but steel and other building materials as well. So yeah. I've told the MECLA group that I'm going to be taking some of the MECLA material, and he wants pragmatism, and he's also asking, what could he do in terms of stimulating the speed to market on these materials, which is really critical for all of us. Mm. And so I just wanted to flag with everyone here what we would think about something like, and it goes to the trials. What if there was a fund that could pay for us to be doing trials with different materials in different applications and to fast track that? So how does everyone feel? Because I believe that's a bottleneck currently. Trying to get the big end of town to kind of pull through materials isn't happening quickly enough. It's just but if there was let's say a fund we could apply to, each individual consortia or group could say, right, we want to test these. We've got this testing regime to go. They could fund that assessment, so it could really help us pull through. So I'm laying that out to the group right now.
Yeah, that would be
backed on this kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be a really great initiative. And currently we are working together with Ecologic, and we have a concrete technical program, and where the program previously was funded by government. So in that program, and we have like 15 different concrete initiatives, and try to increase the use of recycled materials, and or try to reduce the embodied carbon of concrete. And then all the concrete mixes that we've been trialing and via this concrete program, they are outside the VCRO spec. So, and then in order to get these mixes implemented on infrastructure projects, we also get DTP involved, and then we form the kind of like a working group, and then where we have asset owners like MTM, VLine, and we have like academics and from universities or professors from Melbourne University and Deakin or MIT, and then we also have DTP in the working group. So for different initiatives we put forward, and then we prepare kind of like a trial plan, which project is going to try it, and then which application is going to try it, and then we engage with suppliers to develop mixes for us. And then so in a way we keep everyone on the same page, informed. Your audio is not working, sorry.
Is that any better? Hang on.
Yep, can hear you now. Yeah.
Look, sorry, Mike, not enough bandwidth. How's it funded currently? How's that initiative funded?
It was funded by the government, but
which government? Sorry, which government?
Ecologic, Victorian government. One of the government agencies.
So the key here is that the federal government wants to bring acceleration to these activities.
Yep.
And so it wants to partner with the state governments, and it wants to provide an incentive. And so what I'm working with them on is, what would that incentive be? It could be co-development, but really what they want to be doing is doing these assessments within a year.
Yep.
Not with academia, with consortia who can bring some academics and some researchers, but on a timetable that's more appropriate to our net zero ambitions and not to academic timeframes.
Yep, that's exactly what we're doing. So because if it's a research program, it might take 3 years, and if you work with academics, but all the initiatives that we are doing is driven by projects. So we got a really quick turnaround, and for some initiatives that we worked on, like the recycle aggregates, recycle concrete aggregates, and then we from the initiative stage to the implementation field application stage, it only take us 8 months. Yeah. So it's a really quick turnaround if you put right people together and with funding from the government.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to also mention on top of Marcus said, I think that Marcus is great that you bring it up. And if you have attended the Transport for New South Wales presentation with the draft of the carbon reduction, so they're talking about like in 20 years time, they want to have using zero embodied carbon material in their all infrastructure projects. So in order to achieve that by the time, and also all the things that we want to get net zero by 2050 and things like that, so things needs to be done quickly and needs to be done in order for us to understand like the durability in long term, etc. So it's using SCMs, etc. is great. It's good for short term, but I guess like we should invest in other opportunities. And I guess that is both long-term and short-term. So both in terms of the academic research and also both in terms of the application and also combination of both in order to get things, the new things that we can get into the, zero embodied carbon. So I guess, Marcus, that would be a great initiative if you can also talk like, what are the avenues that we can get us there. So that is, I guess, a part of the puzzle that is missing at the moment, and we need to focus on that more.
So I welcome this group. Anyone who's got some feedback, or indeed, pointing me towards probably the best of the of these presentations and thought for the. So it's 21st of August. 21st of August. I've got the meeting, and it's a pretty significant meeting to the secretary. I mean, you don't often get a meeting to the secretary, and I've been able to achieve that. So I really want to take the work that we're doing here to him and to push forward some good recommendations. So we're still formulating.
Yeah, I think that would be great if we can combine all the resources together and then form kind of like working group, and then I think we can quickly achieve the target that we want to achieve. And also back to Ali just said, and we do need to engage academics. I think academics have the capability to undertake testing just within a couple of months, and it doesn't have to be 3 years program. And then I think they have capability to deliver things maybe in half a year or a year to achieve what we want to achieve. It's just how we put a program together that's important.
Yes. Yeah, it's the collaboration framework that we need to work on, because the current ones under standard approaches don't work in time. They're just not working.
Yeah. So probably back to my presentation, or we kind of like digress a little bit. Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate your comments. Yep. So back to the slides, and then we have requirements for SEMs and the overall like replacement targets and all the embodied carbon reduction target, and then we provide reference baseline in a table, and then for each of the concrete compressive strength grade, and then we also nominate the value that you should use to calculate the embodied carbon. And also we have requirements to, I think we had a discussion with Jason previously, and the EPD, and it's also very important. So I think moving forward, our embodied carbon should be the best approach, or should be the best requirement. But now we nominate SCM target because it's easy for project to adopt. And then moving forward, when all the suppliers have ETBs available, I think we should, by that time, we should use embodied carbon reduction as the requirements, as the target, and then everyone will be able to provide EPDs to us. But now, but at this stage, a lot of like small concrete suppliers, they don't have EPDs available. So I think if we just nominate EPD, and then I think that's not fair to small concrete suppliers. So we provide options as well. And if you adopt embodied carbon reduction as the requirements for the project, and then you can either ask concrete suppliers to provide EPDs for your evaluation, or if the concrete suppliers don't have EPDs available, and then you can use these values that we provide here to provide the embodied carbon of your mix for the project to evaluate or to assess which mix they should adopt. So we'll provide a flexibility for the embodied carbon as well, either EPDs or you use the values we provide to calculate your embodied carbon. So it's providing more opportunity for smaller concrete suppliers to get into the market, to get into the project. Yeah. And then that's
Sam, it's Evan here. So I was just thinking, is there? I mean, we've had a discussion about like some of the issues with SCMs already, and the kind of the reference case and that as well. I was just wondering, is there an option to kind of move to like a purely only embodied carbon approach? Like, I guess that allows for like alternative materials. It looks at the embodied carbon, and then just have like a pathway through like this at the moment, like it's an embodied carbon approach. If you're saying the SCMs are based off the embodied carbon calculations, like have embodied carbon and either use EPD data, like you said, or like proxy values are used and people do the calculation. So that way we're moving to embodied carbon targets now and not having that old proxy SCM in there. Like, I mean, why you still got there in, you're going to have those issues that we've all discussed and the pigeonholing, I guess, of the approach. Like we need to move to embodied carbon. Can there be a way that either EPD data is used or you just use generic calculations and you look at like the total impact as well? Like I think that wouldn't be prohibitive for some of the local regional suppliers. Like you still need to like know the mix design, you put the details in, you calculate the amount. Like is there any thought for like only going through was in an embodied carbon approach?
I think an embodied carbon approach is the future, but there is some issues with the embodied carbon approach. For example, if we're talking about supplementary other supplementary materials like lithium slag or calcium clay, I don't think there will be EPDs available or embodied carbon value available for these kind of SEMs. And then if we just adopt embodied carbon like approach, and how do we encourage the use of calcium clay onto the project? How do we, if there is no embodied carbon value for this cementitious material? So that's one thing that we have to address. I think when we have all the embodied carbon or EPDs available for all different kinds of cementitious material, and at that time, I think embodied carbon approach would be the best approach. Yeah, at this stage, it's still quite challenging because for a lot of materials, we don't have the value to support the embodied carbon approach.
I think there's always a process like the LCA experts could go through to give a bottom. That shouldn't be a barrier. I think of like you should send the incentive and the reward for like lower carbon materials. Calcified clays, as you kind of mentioned, like there is a process, I think, for those numbers to be determined. And I think if like there's a contractor that's got a calcified clay or a lithium SCM that they're using and they're not finding a pathway through, I mean, they specifically would want that because of like the embodied carbon return on it. So, I mean, that would be diluted under the other approach as well. Like if it's lower carbon SCMs are available, like so I think the embodied carbon actually rewards innovation, and drives that.
Yep. Yeah. I think we definitely endorse the approach, embodied carbon approach. It's just that it's still a process. Yeah, once we have all the suppliers have the EPDs ready, and when we have the embodied carbon values for all different types of cementitious material ready, and I think that at time, and I think embodied carbon approach would be the best suitable approach. And it also provides flexibility for concrete suppliers like Wholesome, like you can work around with your mix design as long as you achieve the embodied carbon reduction target. So you don't have to use 50% slag in your mix.
Yeah. So currently with like slide 21 and slide 22, are they options that are allowed to be like selected by either the contractor or selected by the client?
I think we put forward these recommendations to the government agencies, and we will have another round workshop with them and to see what their preference will be for the recommendations we put forward. I think that's a discussion we need to have with Manoj and Alberto, and then about the options, and then how do we approach with the government agencies in terms of which recommendation they would choose. Yeah,
thanks for that. All right. I'm also conscious of time. Like Sam, do you want to I guess over the next couple of minutes we'll go through and you're concluding and any other questions I think as well. Just give us 5 minutes at the end for Monica and us business.
Yep. I think that's all I want to present today, and I really appreciate everyone here to give us the time. Yeah. Probably I'll just stop sharing my screen and then hand it over back to Manoj.
Yeah.
Um,
I just want to say thank you, Sam, so much. And thank you everyone for the questions. Please feel free to send through any other comments or questions you have to us as well, and we'll try and get back to that over the next few weeks. We are going to be sort of working through these recommendations with the agencies themselves in the next few weeks, and we're also preparing for the next stage of this as well in the background as well. So feel free to contact me, especially that option of working with the federal government. Definitely keen to speak about that as well and see how we can assist with that sort of thing as well.